Hello, everybody. Just so you know, I do write articles for the law enforcement, first responder, and military community. Sometimes these articles include interviews with high-profile people, which I then turn into articles. I do record these interviews so that I can later convert them. However, I've had several requests to post those interviews, even though the video and audio version is not really what I do. But for your own curiosity, I will post them here. The first one is going to be Stephen Murphy and Javier Pena. They are DEA agents portrayed in the Narcos film on Netflix. So here we go. I must say, first of all, that I forgot to press record, so it's going to go right into Steve Murphy already talking. So I was about a minute late getting on the board. The question was somewhere about how did you get into law enforcement? And then he picks it up from there. Enjoy it, and if you have any feedback, by all means, let me know.
And was very excited to be doing that. You know, just wanted to work uniform, and I know it sounds corny and cliche, but you know, you really do want to try and help people. But then, you know, after 6 years of that, I'm Southern West Virginia. I started out at $9,600 a year. Well, and after 6 years of that, I had 2 sons and you know, marriage going south, and it just wasn't enough to live on. I was working myself to death. Got a job with the railroad police, moved to Virginia Beach, did that for 5.5 years. But throughout my whole career, I was just very interested in narcotics cases. So we, you know, a friend of mine on the railroad police used to be a Virginia state trooper, a guy named Pete Ramey, and he'd worked on the DEA task force out of Roanoke, Virginia. And he used to tell me the stories and the excitement associated with working undercover. And I thought, you know, that's what I want to do. So I finished up my college degree while I was still working, and like Javier, you work nights and you go to school in the daytime, and eventually put my application in 1985. It took 2 years to get hired, but I finally came on as an agent in 1987. And by the way, who's that lovely lady sitting with you, Marwan?
That's my wife.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Hey, lady, how are you? So that was my story.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, me, I grew up in a little place called Hebbronville, Texas, 5,000 population. Laredo was about 50 miles away, and they were hiring at the sheriff's office. This is 1977. My grandparents lived there, so I said, well, you know, I put in. I had a friend, you know, who recommended me, and I was going to college, so I got hired on at the sheriff's office, and basically I worked at the night shift, went to college during the day, and then when I was getting close to graduating, poster came up that DEA was hiring, and back then I was making 10 grand a year at the sheriff's office, 77, and DEA was paying, I think it was like 17,000 a year. So I said, wow, all right. I didn't even know what DEA was. I had to ask somebody what the hell they were. And somebody said, oh, they're the federal narcs. Oh, okay. So anyway, I applied, and took about 1.5 years. And my plans were only to be at DEA for a couple of years because I wanted to go back to Laredo, you know, back at the sheriff's office. So hey, I'll try out the feds, and came on. 30 years afterwards, I retired, you know.
Cool. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
I'd like to jump in there and follow up on that. Were there other agencies that you admired that you would have preferred to go to? Or do you think everything was good as far as how it all turned out? Or should I say perfect?
Well, you know, for me, I actually applied for U.S. Customs. And at that time, you know, it's no longer in existence. They were part of the Treasury Department. Well, the paperwork I submitted, it, you know, within a few months, I got a letter from the IRS telling me to come to, you know, take their test. Well, I'll be the first to admit, I'm not smart enough to be an IRS agent. You know, I can count to 20 because I got 10 fingers and 10 toes. But I went and took the test, and I must have really botched it because I never heard from them again. But in Customs, I really wanted to go be a boat captain on one of the Go Fast boats out in the Atlantic Ocean. But once I became a DEA, and I actually applied for the FBI. Very thankful that didn't come through, to be honest with you. I got a lot of good friends that are FBI agents and analysts and employees over there. And you know, it's just not what I wanted to do.
Sure.
So once I got on as a DEA agent, got stationed in Miami, I actually got to go out on a Go Fast boat with the Customs Service. And man, am I glad I didn't get that job, because that just beats the snot out of you. These guys are running 80 miles an hour on the open ocean, and you're hitting those waves, and it just pounds you to death. I mean, we pounded so hard. They had a tarp that would pull up over the open part of the boat. We hit the wave so hard it busted the screws out, and we left it in the ocean somewhere. I mean, it was, God bless those guys. They take a beating out there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Javier?
Yeah, for me, well, yeah, I applied. I was trying to leave Laredo, and I just wanted to go see the world, and I applied with everybody. ATF, got an interview, and I got accepted. The funny thing, everybody was coming in at the same time. Border Patrol was hiring, and I remember when I got the letter that I'd be stationed in my hometown of Hebronville. I said, you know what, I don't want that. I'll die there, And then I had applied. I was going to go take the test in LA, wanted to go with LAPD. And then everything at the same time, and the guy from DEA, one of the bosses, came over, talked to me, said, Javier, it says DEA is a great opportunity. It's a great job, and you're going to see the world. And you know what? That convinced me. I blew everybody else off, and that's why I came on with DEA.
Great. Marwa, I'm going to go back to you. Did you have any other questions?
I do, but I'd like to hear the other questions from other people. I mean, I want to I actually am interested to kind of know some of the I'm sure the TV exaggerated some points and absolutely ignored other points. Was there anything that sticks out in your minds of what you saw and experienced that wasn't portrayed on TV in any way? I'm sure there's a ton. Whether they could, but whether they couldn't portray it or show it, or it wasn't enough hours or footage or whatever. I find what you guys do really intriguing.
Two things for
I
me.
wouldn't do it, but it's intriguing.
Just remember, they didn't hire us because we're real smart, okay? Two things that stick out for me. One, in the show, they show that we adopted that little girl. In the show, her name's Olivia. That's true. Her real name's Monica. She was 8 months old when we adopted her. So that part of the show is true. There's a lot that's not true. But the first thing that they left out that I wasn't happy about was we adopted a second little girl. Her name is Mandy. She was 5 months old. She's from Medellin. And the orphanage where we got her sat in the shadow of the Monaco building. And the Monaco building is where Pablo's family lived. So that was the first thing. Second thing was the violence that they portrayed in the Narcos series. As bad as that was, in real life, it was much, much worse.
Really? Actually, that's one of the questions I asked Ed, too. I was like, I wonder if it was actually worse than what we saw on TV. I mean, I can't even imagine the craziness with the money and the drugs and the guns and the violence and whatnot.
I'm not sure they would have been able to actually show that on television if they put the real violence in there. But there's one other thing I'd like to point out to everybody that's absolutely true, that all the stories about Javier and his girlfriends, he's a man slut. That's all true.
Hey, well, I tell people, if you saw me on, if you liked my part, then it's all true. That's what I did on the show. Hey, I tell people, you know what? If that was all true, I'd be getting out of prison right about now. So.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, I get that. You know what? My number one question is that I have all the affairs like on TV, man. I tell people, you know what? I wish that would have been true, but that did happen. That, and those Pepes, they got me involved in all sorts of things. As a matter of fact, I had to sign a waiver for Netflix, basically saying, the guy was pretty cool. You guys says, Javier, and this is the executive producer, he calls me up, says, man, we know you're not dirty, but we're going to make you out to be a little bit on the dirty side, working with a vigilante group of Pepes, killing, all the affairs. We know that didn't happen, but we just want to
really
add some. No, it's really. And then I was like, what? And he says, by the way, we're going to be faxing you a paper. Sign it. I said, what am I signing? Because, those Hollywood papers, like novels, you can't, He said, no, just basically, he finally told me, he said, basically, you're not going to, you won't be able to sue us if you get pissed off about your character on the TV. Hey, buddy, pay me more money and I'll sign whatever you want me to do.
Fair enough.
That's what happened.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Marwan, for your questions. I'm going to put you on hold so I can move on and give other people
I'll mute myself. Don't worry.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's
Thank
move
you,
on
Rose.
to see if Michael is prepared and ready, because I see his phone is all over the place. Mike, if you can hear me, you are, let's see, Michael. All right, Mike, are you there?
I hear you. Yeah, how you doing, Ed?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Okay, I see your connection's a little dark there. I don't know what's going on, but we can all hear you loud and clear. So if you have questions you'd like to ask, go ahead.
So you guys were just talking about, you know, signing a waiver saying, you know, I guess signing your rights away to whatever you guys told them, and letting them do. Were you allowed to, you know, put your input in on what was filmed or what wasn't in the film, and agree or disagree to anything they did?
Right. Well, and I think Steve knows a little better, but basically when we signed, and we're not TV guys, remember, we're cops, we were retired, we don't know how show business works. We made a lot of mistakes, and looking back, I think we could have been a lot smarter, but you know, I mean, we're not into that. When we signed off on our contract, they wanted to know the real story. And I don't think Steve imagined that the real story was going to be, what can I tell you, with a lot of artistic licenses added. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
basically, no, we didn't have a choice. When we would see the script, it was like, man, this didn't happen. You know, like, yeah, but they don't care. It's part of that agreement, that waiver you sign, and they can do whatever they can, and that's part of the contract. I mean, usually, and I tell people, you know what, the chronology is pretty accurate on the show. The chronology, the timeline, you know, the bombing,
Okay.
the assassination, a lot of their stuff, and I think but it's something we were not used to. Guys, we're retired cops. We're not, you know, TV people, and in TV, remember, they have to make it interesting. Now, people ain't gonna watch all that, you know, bullshit. You know, if it's not interesting, who's gonna watch a boring show? So anyway, so I'll let Steve. Yeah, he explains it a little better. Yeah.
Yeah. So
All
it
right,
was,
thanks.
when they would write an episode, they would email the script to Javier and I. You know, and the first one we received, I mean, we're excited. We have no experience with Hollywood, and so we took it serious, and we went through and we edited out parts that weren't true, and you know, we picked out things that to make it a little more authentic, and then, you know, send it back, and then, you know, in a week or two they would send you the script again. They didn't make a single change that we recommended. So after that, you know, we could read the handwriting on the wall there, and we would call and talk to Eric Newman. He's the executive producer and creator of Narcos, and we talked to the writers, and they kind of explained things to us, you know, more realistically. But then we would pick out little things that would try and make the show itself more authentic. So if you remember where they show the guys in the DEA office there at the embassy, you can see, like in the etched glass, you can see a big circle that has the DEA. We call it the Screaming Eagle, but it's the DEA emblem. They did that, and the screensavers on the computers, you know, they used what we actually used back in the day. Well, no, back then we didn't even have computers, did we, Javier?
No, right.
So, but you know, one big error that they made, and I pointed out to them 100 times, is the weapons that they showed Javier and I carrying. We both had Smith & Wesson Model 659 9mm semi-automatic pistols. That was our primary weapons. The reason we carried those is because the hammer is shaved off, and you can put it in the back of your pants, and it won't snag on your shirt when you pull it out. And it's stainless steel, so if you get sweat on it, it doesn't rust. Well, you know, I think they show us carrying, I don't remember what it is now, revolvers and some chrome-plated monstrosity of a gun that no undercover guy would ever carry in his life, because it's, you know, it's just too big. But, you know, I kind of argued with him a little bit, and what it came down to is that's what the prop company had available in Colombia when they were filming. So there you go.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Mike. I appreciate you. I'll put you on mute because I know Mike's not
No
very
problem.
technically advanced. We'll go on to the next. Mr. Brian Gillespie, I guess you can choose the unmute button, and that should bring you right on.
Gotcha. Thank you, Eddie.
No problem. I don't know you personally, but I know we were planning on this, so if you want to introduce yourself briefly, you can go right
Sure.
to the questions.
My name is Brian Gillespie. I'm retired from Manasquan Police Department, born and raised up in Jersey City, fourth generation law enforcement. I really appreciate you guys being here today for us. Big fan of the show, big fan of what happened. And I remember that era, born in '64, so I remember that era very well. My question is, what was the scariest part for you when you thought that you were probably going to die? If you know, since we found out they've taken so many liberties with the show, you know, were you guys, you know, when did you think that you weren't going to come out of that situation? I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, well, you know, and for me, nice meeting you. And again, wow, congratulations. You had a great career. And I guess your family did too. Very good. Anyway, to me it was just the car bumps. You know what because you never knew, and we passed by, and you know a couple of them missed us, but you would hear that noise, you would hear that bomb, you would hear that sound, and that was to me the scariest because he was placing them at all sorts of places. He was putting them right outside our base. When we would leave with the convoys, 6, 7 big police trucks, he knew. So some of the neighborhood people would help him out. So, and a lot of cops got killed, you know, because of those car bombs. They, you know what I'm saying? It was just, the problem was you never knew where he was doing them. So we came close a couple of times, and I would always like, man, you know, and the other one was when basically we started with the 800 number. Basically, we started a reward for Pablo Escobar. So would-be informants would call, and our policy was not to let them come into our base because we didn't want them to know where we were at. So we would go, Steve and I, it was probably one of the dumbest things we ever did, but you know what, I mean, we would pick, we would always tell them, all right, what are you wearing? Meet us at the bus station in Medellin, which is the biggest bus station in Colombia. I mean, hundreds of buses, big terminal. So we would tell them, all right, go to this restaurant, stand outside. And basically, I was always scared, you know, it was going to be a hit on us. You know, saying, wow. So, but we would have undercover cops go in, make sure that it wasn't a setup. So to me, that was another one, you know, how to get killed. You know.
Thank you.
And for me, Brian, you know, first of all, thank you for your service, brother. It's, I don't know how many years you did, but glad you came out of it alive. It's strange times that the uniform guys are going through now. I can't imagine being a uniform cop today. But for me, there was a couple things down there. One was when we would fly in from Bogota to Medellin, the airport is outside the city on top of a mountain. It's called Rio Negro. Normally, the Colombian National Police would bring a Huey helicopter gunship in and would pick us up, and then they would fly us into the city of Medellin. Medellin's built in kind of like in a bowl, and, you know, down in the bowl portion of two mountains. And so if the helicopters were out on operations or having maintenance done or whatever, they would send 3 carloads of plainclothes guys to pick us up. You had to drive. This is about a 45-minute drive from the Rio Negro airport into the city of Medellin where the police base was. And this is a mountainous, curvy road. And these cops, well, first of all, you had to travel. You know, the cops would tell you, hey, you know, you got your gun with you? And of course we did. And they said, pull it out. You would travel with your gun up here in your chest, ready to engage targets, because you know, 2 riders on a motorcycle, that was one of their favorite ways of trying to assassinate people. So, but the scary as that was, the scariest part was the drivers of the cops that were driving us in, because they were passing people on curves and on hillsides and going over top of the hills. And I mean, you talk about white knuckle driving. You know, I grew up in Tennessee and West Virginia. I'm used to mountain roads. You don't pass on those curves and going over the tops of those hills. That's one of the scariest things I ever did. And another part of that, when my wife and I adopted Mandy, this is after Escobar's dead, she got to experience that because she'd heard me talk about it. So the 3 carloads of guys pick us up. We drive into Medellin, and they're doing 80 miles an hour on this mountainous road, and my wife is slapping her feet. She's like, I understand what you're talking about now. But the other thing for me was, I guess the scariest part was we would go out with the cops on the Huey gunships. And, you know, you felt pretty safe because the Huey gunship back then would carry 8 combat-ready troops. And that's with all your gear and everything. And you might have 5 or 6 helicopters coming in. So you got a nice little landing force, but because of the mountains, the sound of the helicopters echoes. They'll hear you 5 minutes before you get there. You know, so they've got plenty of time to set up. They're better armed than we are. They had RPGs. They could have shot us out of the air. Thank the good Lord, most of the time they would run off up into the mountains. So almost every time we landed, you know, there was nobody there, which very thankful for, believe me. And we had the Columbia National Police had a couple of Hueys that had the mini electric guns mounted on the sides, and they would fly high cover for you. And if you started taking rounds, they would zoom down in there and, you know, try to take out the opposition. But it was just, that was real scary for me because they heard us coming. You know, there was you can't sneak in a helicopter.
Yeah, very good.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thank you for your service.
Hoorah.
All right, thank you. Yes, thank you, Danny. I appreciate it. I'm gonna unmute you. Or no, wait, excuse me. This is part of the technical portion I'm trying to figure out. Where are we? Okay, Brian Brady, are you there?
It says he's connecting.
Oh, okay, all right. Until he connects, we'll move on to the next one. Brian, I'll get back to you if you can hear me. And then we'll move on to Andrew. Here we go. Andrew Pagan, you have to unmute. Press your unmute button.
Got it.
All right, there you go. This is a coworker of mine. We talk TV all the time. Introduce yourself briefly, Andrew.
Hi, my name is Andrew Pagan. I did 10 years with the New Jersey Department of Corrections. I recently got into, pretty much had an offer I couldn't refuse with a real estate friend of mine, and I've been doing good on that. Been working hard every day, working from home through all this COVID and figuring things out, navigating the real estate landscape, and it's definitely a different world out there right now. But it's I'll tell you one thing, like you could put a price on things, and this is going to lead into my question, but perspective is everything. And me being able to listen to all these people, you know, these outcries of in the climate today with social injustice, being there with felons, you know, rapists, guys put in there for drugs, murderers, you know, kind of having casual conversation with these people, knowing them inside and out. My question is to the team here. Did you ever have any opportunities to have casual conversations? And I know that TV and the media, I can't imagine back then with the limited resources you had, but what was it like if you had the opportunity to talk with the casual conversations with any of these these notorious sicarios?
Yeah, wow, it's a great question. And I did a internship at the Texas Department of Corrections. You know, and just real quick, I think they were screwing with me my first day on the job. I'm a college kid, you know, I'm working there. They assigned me death row, right? Man, and, you know, I'm scared. Yeah, that's so I got the clipboard, man, and it's all these notorious killers from Texas. One was, I mean, wow, the Candyman killed his kids on Halloween to collect insurance money. Another guy had been an escapee from the Department of Corrections. They had barricaded people outside. I mean, anyway, a lot of stone cold killers, like you said. But anyway, I mean, it's funny now. I'm doing about the fourth, and they know I'm scared shitless. So one guy goes boom, I throw the clipboard, I get the hell out of that catwalk. Anyway, but again, it's a different life with all those criminals, man. But going back to your question, yeah, we talked to a couple of. I talked to one Sicario, who 15 years old, and wow, it's just and I helped in his arrest. It was a long story because the informant only wanted to call me, only trusted me, so I had to go out to the bar. The guy was dancing. The guy fought when we tried to arrest him. Luckily, the other cops came in. No, nothing happened. But he did have a gun, pulled it out. When we get back to the base, they let me sit in on the interview, and the guy confessed, and it's something, a confession I'll never forget. Basically, he says, you know what, I'm 15 years old. He said, Pablo Escobar has given me another life. He's given me money. You know, my mom, she was in poverty. She's got a shelter. She's got a roof. She's got food. Is able to buy her a stove or a refrigerator. And he says, we idolize Pablo Escobar. We all want to work for him. And he says, you know what? I am going to die for Pablo Escobar, and I'm going to kill whoever the boss wants me to kill. That's my life because I owe him. And he says, I'll be dead by 22, 23 years old. I'm not going to make it out of this. They call them comunas. I mean, the ghetto, you know, the projects, basically. And then, you know what, and then the other one where he confessed to us, he says, because Pablo Escobar had put bounties on police officers. And so uniformed officers walking the streets, the cars will go by, shoot them. You know, and this thug, 15-year-old kid, thug, confessed to us. He says, you know what, and real nonchalant, he says, you know, I've already killed 10 police officers. Like, we started, what? Yeah. And $100 a head. I get paid 100. At the end of the day, I go collect the money. That's that attitude. And you multiply that attitude by 500 sicarios. So Pablo Escobar was idolized. And you know what, when we tell the story of Pablo Escobar, you know what, the guy did have charisma. I mean, the guy he'd go recruit them, all the sicarios, and there'd be hundreds of them, 200, 300, all waiting to meet the boss. Pablo would hug all of those kids, you know what I'm saying? Hire them, hey, all right, talk to this guy, he's gonna give you a job. And that was their allegiance, you know, so they got money, they got that love that Pablo Escobar, I mean, he was very different, but then they were brainwashed into, hey, you know what? Yeah, Pablo says, I need this family killed. Boss, I'll do it, I'll volunteer, I need this bomb place. So that was that attitude that we were dealing with, and it could go a long way into Pablo Escobar's attitude, the sicarios' attitude, but if you look at all the sicarios that Pablo had working for him, this guy's never hesitated in killing someone. So wow. that was the problem we're facing with, and we never realized that. I mean, we're law enforcement in the States. You know, we were not used to that type of stuff. So it was different, an eye opener for us.
And for me, Andrew, so there was a guy that would show up at the base, and Javier and I were suspicious of him. We didn't know who he was, and we went to Colonel Martinez and said, Colonel, who is this guy? And he said, well, everybody calls him Don Berna. He's been authorized to work with the search block by the Attorney General of Colombia. We don't know much about him, but he's been okay to be in here and for us to work with him. Well, there were times like Javier was telling you about us going to the bus station to meet people, and we were worried about hits on us. And, I mean, you see me, I come from an English-Irish background. I'm about as white as you get. I don't blend into a Hispanic country. So I'm like sticking out like a sore thumb anywhere I go. And so what would we do is this elite unit of Colombian police officers we worked with, they would go with us, and we do pre-surveillance and scout things out to make sure it wasn't a setup and all that. But if they were busy out on operations, well, Don Berna and his guys would go with us. We came to find out, we never had a problem when Don Berna's guys were with us. I mean, nobody would come close to us because everybody else in Colombia knew who he was except us. After Escobar was dead, we find out Don Berna's the head of Los Pepis. He was the head of security for the Moncada family, which was part of the Medellin cartel. He teamed up with Judy Moncada after Pablo killed her husband, and then he also teamed up with the Cali cartel. That's who was paying his fees, to take out Pablo and the entire. Basically, what they were doing was taking out their competition. So that was that was very eye-opening when you found out that, because these are stone cold murderers. I feel sure now after the fact that they would have had no problems whatsoever putting a bullet in our head, because they've done it to a lot of other people. And then there was one other guy after Pablo was dead. We had used to have not a lot, but people would walk into the embassy and want to talk to a DEA agent. We call them walk-in informants. So this guy comes walking in and he says he's got information on the Medellin cartel. So they send Javier and I down to talk to the guy. He worked for Pablo, and his role was, he said every 3 weeks he would travel to Haiti with a suitcase of money, and he was given every 3 weeks he'd give $400,000 cash to the president of Haiti, Jean-Bertrand Aristide. That's a big accusation to make against the president of a country, right? So we investigated him. DEA sent him some polygraphers. The intelligence community sent in some polygraphers. They grilled him, and everybody determined he was 100% accurate in the stories that he was able to tell from his experiences in Haiti. So we thought, well, the heck, you know, Pablo's dead, the Medellin cartel's gone. Let's continue to pursue the people that benefited or that facilitated Pablo's illegal activities. So we decided, you know, we would get the U.S. Attorney's Office in South Florida and indict the president of Haiti. If you go back and read your history books, you'll see that the administration that was in power at that time went down and gave Aristide asylum in the United States because he was about to be overthrown. And then that same political party used our military, our special operators, SEAL Team 6, Delta Force from the U.S. Army, to reinstall Aristide into power over Haiti. When we're ready to go to the grand jury, you know, a call comes from the White House, not directly to us, but through channels, stand down, you're not indicting this guy. So that was a little bit of a different way of dealing with one of these sicarios. And the reason the guy wanted to snitch him out, he said, hey, I've become a Christian. I'm trying to atone for my sins. And that's why he wanted to tell the truth. We brought him to the United States, and then he was whisked off to a safe house somewhere. And I never heard from him again. I don't know if you did, JP.
Nah, never did. But and like Steve said, this guy, they brought in, you know, CIA people. I mean, they boxed him. You know, CIA boxes also, the guy passed. But what got everybody believing in this guy described Aristide's office to a T. And, you know, all those special intelligence forces, they got photographs of everybody, you know, what they look like. And, you know, I remember this guy described all the paintings, that the president had on his desk. He couldn't have been lying, basically. I mean, he passed our box, CIA, he was drilled. Special U.S. attorney came in just to try to break him. The guy was right on the money. That was kind of scary. But like Steve said, Domberna, yeah, and you know, I went back just real quick, back to Columbia '99, and by that time, you know, a lot of Domberna was dirty, and man, I was crucified in the press. You know, the press came up with a story that I was in bed with Domberna, that we were friends, that I was killing people with them, and this was publicized in Colombia, and I'm the number 2 guy at this time in Colombia, so I got a lot of heat over Domberna, and you know, and a lot of people do not know, and we tell them, you know what, we extradited Domberna. He's serving 30 years in the States right now. I think he's getting pretty much close to getting out, but you know, he got indicted for narco trafficker. He was killing tons of people, but we did not know at the time we were working with him. And I'm glad, like Steve and I, we never signed him up as an informant. He was working for the cops, so we never put any paper on him.
Wow, that's good stuff. Andrew, we're going to move on just so I can get through to everybody. If you have another question, I'm going to double back around if time allows. I'm going to go next to Brian Brady. If you can unmute your button, you're on live. And then after him, we'll go on to Danny G and Tony Jean, followed Brian. Brian, you there, buddy?
Yes, I am. Hi, Ed. How are you?
Good. Now, Brian's a good friend of mine. If you want to introduce yourself briefly, let them know a little bit about you, and go ahead with your question.
Are you related to Tom?
Yes, he is my rich uncle up there in New England, and tuning in from New Jersey over here. I apologize for my late entry into the meeting. Not proud to say, but I just got lost in a state park with my children and wife. I can't believe I'm confessing that to the woman that we're in Colombia hunting down Escobar. So I don't think I would have fared as well as you guys. But my question, as I'm about a 20-year law enforcement officer up here in New Jersey. More with how the national police were set up over there in Colombia. I know you guys had to work with them? I know over here we have the state police, obviously FBI, CIA, all that. But, I'm a local municipal police officer. Did they have them also, or was it just like a state police? Or exactly how did that formation work over there? And how big was it? And how much information was actually, kept from the wrong hands? Could you actually rely on them, or did you just have to pick a few that you partnered with?
Okay.
I guess Steve, if you want to go first.
Go ahead, JP. He was.
I'll go first. It just the national police. It's national. It's the only police force. They run Colombia. You had some municipalities, but that didn't. It was basically the Colombian National Police was in charge of all of Colombia. Every police department, like for example in Bogota, it was broken up into units. So we worked with the DIJIN, DIJIN unit, which was the intel part of it, which is like the plainclothes, the detectives, you had the auto theft people, the narcotics people, you had the intelligence, the counter narcotics. Our bread and butter was the narcotic guys. So we worked with them, they knew us, we knew them from Bogota. So when they started chasing Pablo Escobar, it was our unit in Bogota that was responsible. So we knew those guys, they knew us, so it was perfect. They trusted us, we trusted them. At the beginning, we were putting in some people from Medellin, but Pablo got to them. Escobar got to them where the corruption, he'd get to the family, hey, your son done warn me about, they're coming after me, I'm gonna kill all of y'all. So the poor guys, they had to, snitch, basically tell Pablo Escobar, so they got caught. But it was just that pressure on their family. But then, like I said, we only use guys from Bogota. So, yes, it was the national police. There wasn't, like I said, we worked with this group, the DIJIN, that was based in Bogota, which is the plainclothes. However, the record keeping really wasn't there. There was no national police reporting. Everybody kept their own reports, if at any, you know what I'm saying? So Steve and I pretty much organized a lot of the intel where we knew what was going on. But, and by being in Medellin with these guys who knew us, we trusted each other. And that was a pretty big factor, back then. So, Steve,
Yes, and Brian, thank you for your service as well, man. Are you still active duty? Are you still with the police?
Yeah, I just had to unmute. I didn't want some background. Yeah, I actually have to report in today at 16:30 hours to 02:30 hours. Yes, starting my tour today. It's an interesting climate we're in right now, but
yeah. I can imagine.
You guys are the Cowboys, and man, it's an amazing accomplishment what you guys did. It's great.
Well, thanks for saying that. There were some local police there, like in Medellin, they had their own city police. We did not trust them at all. We did not work with them. Bogota, they had the traffic cops basically, but I'll be honest with you, the biggest thing I ever saw them do was pull us over and ask for a bribe. It could be $5. I mean, it could be, especially if it was getting close to Christmas time, that was very, very frequent. But there was another organization called DAS that's no longer in existence down there. And they're kind of like it's like a cross between the FBI and the secret police. General Mazda Marcus was the head of it. He was a prime target of Pablo Escobar's. I think Pablo tried to kill me how many times, Javier?
7.
7 different times. One time took a bus with 500 kilos of dynamite, parked it in front of DAS headquarters, blew the damn thing up, left a humongous crater in the front of the building, just devastated the front of the DAS headquarters. This, like a, 10, 15 story building. General Mazda walked out of it. He's still alive today. But the reason I bring that up is because it's just a perfect example about the viciousness of Pablo Escobar. The fact that he's willing to kill, he killed hundreds of people with that bomb. They found the chassis of the bus on top of a multi-story building a couple blocks away. That's how powerful this bomb was. But he didn't care. It was, man, this guy, he's one of the most heinous people that's ever walked the face of our earth. We attribute 10 to 15, maybe 20,000 murders to him. He had one remaining member of his organization that just passed away a couple months ago. They called him Popeye. He was one of his main sicarios. We were on a documentary that Popeye was also interviewed on. We said don't interview him, and of course after they interviewed us, they went and interviewed Popeye anyway. Shows how much influence we have in Hollywood. But he says the number is more like 50,000 people that Pablo Escobar was responsible for their deaths. I mean, Popeye even says he himself killed, was it 300 people, Javier?
Yep.
He pulled the trigger on. And he said that he helped arrange as many as 3,000 murders. You can watch this on National Geographic. It's called In Their Own Words. Is that right? I
think so.
We've done so many documentaries, I get them mixed up. But you can see him, and he says it right on camera. So just heinous people down there. Or the Sicarios were. There was just very, very dangerous people down there.
Well, Brian, I'm going to mute you, and I'm going to keep moving to get to the other two that are online. If you want to have another question, we can double back. So we'll move on to Danny G. Danny G, can you hear us?
Yep, no problem. Loud and clear.
All right. Now, can you introduce yourself briefly to the crowd?
Sure. My name's Dan Geddes. I just retired after 28 years in the Elizabeth, New Jersey Police Department as a lieutenant. Over the course of my career, I had a whole host of assignments, investigatively, supervising investigations, whatever. Was assigned to DEA task force in Newark on multiple occasions. And any knowledge I have of what you gentlemen did, and it was amazing what you accomplished, goes back to I read Killing Pablo by Mark Bowden, and I've heard stories since and things like that, and that leads to I just ordered it today on Nook. Literally just downloaded it.
All right.
But my question, I have two. If we get through one and I can ask the other one later, that's fine. But you mentioned the CIA, and how much work did you do with intelligence agencies or the military? There were, rumors about Delta and Special Forces training people down there. Were you involved in any of that? Did they ask you, to kind of guide them in what went on? And how did that, like you were basically changing foreign policy by your work on the ground. So how did that affect what you were doing in your investigations?
Yeah, wow, great question, and I'll go first. But then, wow, thanks for your service. You've done it all, man. Wow, that is great. You've been through different facets. And Lieutenant, congratulations. I mean, that's to achieve. That's a great honor. Yeah, basically, just real quick, Steve could go more into the Delta guys, great guys. CIA guys, I don't know. I didn't get along with them. We didn't get along with them. They were just, and it was all territorial. It was all jealousy type shit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Jealousy. We're the narcotics experts, and they were the subversive experts. You know what? And when we were in Bogota, they had their own wire room. We had our own wire room. We didn't cross, we stuffed with narcotics. That's what we do best for. That's what we do for a living, right? And they do the subversives. They do the communists, in which they're the best. They do that. But when Pablo Escobar was a narcotic trafficker, we started. Then all of a sudden, they were trying to say, we're the experts. We're going to run it. You know what? They did not have a clue. And I get a little pissed off, and I get, because like you said, one of their boss even threatened me of actually having me indicted and for treason. I'm like, treason? What the hell is treason? You know what I'm saying? It was just bull. Anyway, I didn't like them. Nowadays we do work great with them, and great bunch of guys, but it was just that jealousy type shit. But and you can attest to it. It's that jealousy, right? I'm better. I have my information.
Territorial fights and all that.
We had that, and this was like I said, this was before 9/11. And you know what? Because I was a boss after 9/11. After 9/11, my advice to people is you better not get caught not sharing information, right? You need to share whatever's out there. I don't care, But anyway, it was just the CIA guys, and I'll let Steve, because he's got a better on all that stuff flying in the air.
Right, Center Spike. That was Center Spike, right?
It, right?
Yeah.
Back then, we weren't allowed to talk about it. Now everybody knows about it.
Right.
You know, but thank goodness everything's declassified, or we would be in jail for giving up classified information. When Escobar escaped, and like Javier said, you know, we're law enforcement, just like you guys. And by the way, thank you for your service. That's fantastic. Glad you made it to the end.
Thank you.
You know, our responsibility is to collect the evidence to make prosecutable cases that we can prosecute in the United States. That was our focus. The CIA and the U.S. military, you know, the CIA, they focus on the insurgent groups. They don't give a crap about evidence, you know, and going to court. In fact, they won't go to court. Yeah. You know, so we had two completely different missions. And like Javier said, it was jealousy because, you know, we're hitting the Medellin cartel really hard, and we're seeing the FARC guerrillas providing security on the cocaine labs out in the jungles. Well, what do we call that in law enforcement? We call it a clue, don't we? Because now you've got a direct connect between the insurgents and the narcotics traffickers. Well, the CIA refused to recognize that crossover. That was the problem. Just like Javier said, it was just jealousy and territorialism, like you said. But when Escobar escaped there in 92, our ambassador at the time was a retired Navy commander. And let me tell you, he was a COPS ambassador. He's very proactive. He's get out there, kick ass, take names, get the job done. We love that part. But within that first week, first thing you know, here comes a guy named Colonel Jerry Boykin, who's a retired 3-star general now. He's the head of Delta Force for the U.S. Army.
Right.
Brings in some of his operators. Within a few days after that, we get members of SEAL Team 6. Now, I got to tell you, I was kind of in awe of these guys, to be honest with you. In my opinion, those are the studs of the world. We make no bones about it. Every presentation we do, you know, we recognize them for their efforts, and we tell the world, if we're ever kidnapped, that's who I want to come and get me, because I've seen them operate. They're that good. I would pick them way before I'd pick HRT out of the FBI, just because I've worked with them and I trust them. Javier and I were even doing some part of a training team with SEAL Team 6 down in Dam Neck, Virginia, a few years ago before our speaking business really took off. So that connection has traveled on into retirement afterwards. But here's the difference. None of us were allowed to go outside the wire at the base in Medellin because of our safety. Well, Javier and I, at the very beginning, we've been going out of the wire since we've been in Colombia. You know, he'd been in Colombia 3 years before I ever got there. So he's got a lot of experience and connections. So when we got up there, we decided, you know, there's no way we can do our job. And think about this. If I called you and says, hey, we got information that Pablo Escobar is down here at the corner of 1st and Main Street. Go see what you find out. I want to be back here in the safe zone, getting a cup of coffee. Report back to me what you find out. How much respect would you have for us?
Right, right.
So we went out on operations almost every single day. We were flying out on helicopters. We were going out in convoys. We were going out undercover. We were meeting informants. We were doing our jobs, what we were paid to do. And Javier, for those of you who don't know, Javier will be right back.
Oh, I guess his mail came in.
Say again?
I guess his mail showed up.
No. We've got our books. We sell autographed and personalized copies of our books. We got a little merchandise business. You can see the crap on the shelves behind me here. And we just spoke to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners a couple of weeks ago, and they inundated us with orders. We had to order up 2 more orders, 500 more books. And they go to him first, he autographs them, they send them to me, I autograph them, and then we ship them out. So that's what that's all about.
Oh, okay.
Little side hustle we got going on.
My PC, our PC, something's wrong, and I got my technical expert here trying to.
We can still see and hear you, Javier.
Yeah, no, I guess it's running, the battery's running low, so we're trying to figure out why it's plugged in, but
yeah,
okay, I think it came unplugged. We got it.
So back to the thing with them. The military, the difference between us and them is they follow orders. You know, I mean, we're not violating laws by not following orders, but we are violating policies within DEA, internal policies. In our opinion, if Delta and the SEALs have been allowed to do the job and go out of the base, we firmly believe that we would have had Escobar captured or dead in less than 3 months, probably much less, probably much like 3 weeks. But politics got in the way. We didn't have SOCOM back then. You had Southern Command out of Panama. They got in the way. A lot of just the politics, the bureaucracy of all this BS cost thousands of people's their lives in Colombia, because they, you bring in the best special operators in the world and then you don't let them go do their job. I mean, we've stayed in touch with these guys, and so we just have immense respect for them. But again, our mission was different from theirs. We would love to adopt that kinetic strike mentality they have, where you find, fix, and finish. I'm fine with that. You know what finish means, right? But we're law enforcement, and that's not what we do.
Right.
So that was the big difference, and that's how we integrated with those guys. By the way, Eddie, don't you think he looks like Kevin Grogan?
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
I thought that's who that was on there when we first came on.
A little bit, yeah. I thought he was a coworker that had a different name. Maybe he has that look that he just looks like other people.
Yeah.
Maybe I do. I don't know. Lets me fit in.
I'm gonna try to pull up Tony Jean, but I see that she's not sitting at her desk. Tony Jean, are you there? Because I think she was the most excited to actually do this. Because
look like it.
Yeah. Well, I'll put her on mute again, and we'll move on. When I see her come up, then I'll pull her up. Andrew, I'll double back to you. If you could just unmute. Pagan, you there, buddy?
Muted. He's muted.
Yeah. You have to unmute your.
There it goes.
There you go. All right. So if you have another question, go right ahead.
Yeah. So now I'm going to go ahead and assume you guys are super familiar with the show.
A little bit.
Okay. All right. So this one CIA guy who keeps popping up. He popped up in Mexico. He popped up in Colombia. He's in, like, I don't know, maybe he's got a total of 15 minutes airtime between 30 something episodes. But this guy is like the dark and ominous hand that apparently holds a ton of power and say. Is that guy real?
Oh. I mean, we told them the stories about how we did not get along with the CIA, and they took Javier's experience with the CIA, as bad as it was, and that's what they came up with. That the guy that plays that, he's got the real short white hair.
Yep.
And I just forgot his name. In real life, he's one of the nicest people I've ever met. And in the movie Hunger Games,
yes,
he's the head of the military forces that are out there when they're getting ready to kill whoever the people are, the district that 13 or whatever it was. I'm talking about. He's a phenomenal actor, but
okay.
When they were filming season 1, towards the end of season 1, my wife and I and our 2 daughters went down there for a week, and he was the first guy to come out and meet us, introduce himself, take us around, show us where the commissary was for eats and the bathrooms and the movie sets, long before the producers ever came out to talk to us. He's a real gentleman, but man, he plays a great bad guy, doesn't he?
He did. He
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, and like Steve said, nicest guy in the world. There's a great picture. We're at a party later on Netflix, and we get along, man. There's a great picture. He kisses me on the cheek, man, and he's pretending that picture's out there somewhere. But great guy. But you know what? CIA. They were. I don't know. I just had some bad experience, But back then, not now. Not my second time around in '99, but yeah, those guys. And like I told you before, just jealousy type shit. That's all it was. They wanted to be number one, and they knew we had the contacts. We had the, And one thing, like Steve mentioned, we'd go out on operations with the cops, and the cops would always say, "Hey," they call Steve Stick. They couldn't pronounce Steve, so hey, Javier, Stick. Why are you guys, you're always risking your lives coming out with us, helping us out in operations? What about those guys back there? Because they weren't somebody, why don't they come out with us? So, they were not allowed because of the embassy, and they would snitch us off every time to the embassy. But hey, who cares, man? You got to do your job.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. We're going to try. I don't see Tony Jean. Seems like she's offline right now. So, Brian, we'll go back to you.
Well, thank you, sir. Guys, thanks again. I like Danny's military question. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, so it was one of the things I wanted to know about how the military worked in as well. But I have a two-pronged question. One was, how close were you really to getting him? What was the closest you ever got that, I don't know, you know, if the show took the liberties on that? And what was your relationship really like? Did you ever have that time where you just didn't like what one or the other was doing? And were you that close?
Okay. I'll go first. You know what? And I'll do the first side of the question. We came close many times, especially when he first escaped. He was vulnerable because, you know, he leaves the so-called prison and we're intercepting him. Man, we have him located. And in the show, it'll show we had conflicts with one of the colonels. It wasn't Colonel Martinez, who's a real hero, was there the first search. When Pablo Escobar surrenders, they tell Martinez, you need a break. You know, go take their send him to Spain, because it was very personal between Colonel Martinez and Escobar. Escobar was trying to kill Martinez's family. It was just, you know what I'm saying? So they send Martinez out. So when Pablo escapes, there's a colonel in Medellin, and I know very well, but he was just afraid. He did not want to, you know. So when the Delta guys would tell us, all right, he's here at this location, Colonel, we need manpower. We got him located. No, I'm not going to give you manpower. It was like every excuse in the book not to go after Pablo Escobar, and that hindered us a lot. It hindered us to the point where the ambassador was calling me personally pissed off. What the hell is going on? You all had him located. And I finally told him, we can't work with this colonel. He doesn't want to, you know, go after Escobar, basically. So then I tell, you know, we do a president, I said, we put the band back together again. We brought back Martinez. The original guys, 10 guys, they hated Pablo Escobar. It took about 2 months. So once Martinez came back, man, it was, the war was on again. However, then towards the latter part of the search, we had him located several times, but when we'd go in and see mentioned with helicopters, you know, and that's just the only way you could mount an operation in the jungles of Columbia Mountains. You go in with helicopters, you'd send in the manpower on the ground, people would warn him, he would hear it. There were a couple of times, man, when we got there, and Pablo Escobar always had a cook and a young girl with him at the stash house. And they told us, hey, he heard the noise. His coffee is still warm. You know, you barely missed him. You know, so and people were protecting him also. They tell them. So it was kind of hard. But we should have got him. We came close many times, but because of the operations, the terrain, we just, you know, we're always there a little late. So yeah.
And what was the second part of your question?
What was your relationship really like? Did you guys ever go at each other's throat?
You know what? We saw that on the show, and I mean, you got to call BS on some things. That was one of them. The truth is, Javier and I have never even had a disagreement. You know, we get along. We're very opposite of each other. I've been married my whole life. He's married now, but he's a bachelor, confirmed bachelor forever. I'm a little bit organized, and he's a little bit disorganized. He speaks fluent Spanish, and I speak a lot of Spanglish.
I like to drink, and he doesn't, so I tell people I drink for him. Right, so right. There you go.
So it's that's the one thing that's one of the things I really didn't like about the show. But you know what? Hollywood is based on drama, and that's what the producers told us. You know, we've got to put some drama in there. Like it showed my wife taking the first baby we adopted and going back to Miami. Man, I got to tell you, there's a story with that because her character is portrayed, and her real name is Connie. She would get to read their scripts just like Javier and I would. And I read that when I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to go well. And so I gave it to her, and it wasn't 15 minutes. She came in and she's shaking that thing in front. Did you read this shit? Did you read this? You know that's not true. I never left you in Colombia. I stayed with you the whole time. And I said, baby, I didn't write the stupid thing, okay? I know you didn't leave. But when we went out for the premiere of season 2, Netflix, they wined us and dined us and all that stuff. And the night before the premiere, we went and had dinner with Eric Newman and his wife. Well, my wife had already chewed Eric out on the phone because they wrote the script that way. So when we come walking into this really, really nice restaurant in Hollywood, you know, Eric's standing up going, Connie, are we okay? Now you're going to kick my ass in here? Is everything okay with us? So, but no, that the way they portrayed us is completely wrong.
Right.
Good question, though.
Yeah, great question.
Thank you very much, guys.
There's been several good questions. I'm going to try Tony Jean again. I see her camera's back on, but I don't see anybody there. Tony Jean, are you there? Are you in the room at least? If not, we're going to move on again. I'll give her a couple more seconds. Okay, if not, we're going to double back to Brian Brady. I know he has a question that I asked, that I really wanted to ask to regarding the article. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, guys. How much were you guys, if at all, involved with anti-Escobar groups like Los Pepes? Like, did you have informants with them? Obviously, they would love to give up Escobar in a heartbeat, but were they people that you can trust, or you know, your ties not too strong with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, and that's, you know what, when we do all of this, this is one of the sore spots is Los Pepes, because, you know, I mean, and I'm being as honest as I can. Los Pepes, the head, and Steve talked about him a little bit ago, Don Berna. Don Berna was helping us out with security. He was helping out the cops with intelligence. However, we did not know Don Berna was doing a lot of bombs, was trying to kill Pablo Escobar's family until after Pablo gets killed. You know, and Don Berna's name starts coming up, and then all of a sudden, and it was about 2 years afterwards, we get a lot of information. Don Berna was the head of Los Pepes, which was a right-wing vigilante group. Don Berna killed about 30 of Escobar's associates, attorneys, teachers who were teaching their, you know, Escobar's kids. He had them killed. Don Berna was trying to kill Escobar's mother, wife, and 2 kids. And if you recall, Don Berna was the head of security for Galeano, Moncada, and they loved Moncada and Galeano. So when Pablo kills them in the prison, Don Berna gets all the groups, all the traffickers, says, we're going to go after Escobar dirty because Escobar's trying to kill us. So our relationship with Don Berna, it's a little over-exaggerated, but we know him, of course. I mean, he protected Steve and I. He helped us out. I think, you know, I mean, when we would meet informants, the cops sometimes could not cover us. Don Berna covered us. We did not know who he was at the time. And, you know, and there's a great story too. I think it's in our book where Don Berna gives me a watch after Escobar gets killed. They have a little party, and I think it's like $100,000 watch. I said, Don Berna, I can't take, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the cops told me, Javier, take it because you're going to piss him off. So I called my boss, you know, and we turned it in. And I tell people, I just saw back at headquarters before I retired, some guy was wearing it. So, you know, there it's being put to good use. But Don Berna's an interesting character, and he's in prison right now in the U.S. He got extradited. But, you know, accusations that, you know, we were involved with the killing of innocent people is not true. That is, you know, in Don Berna, I mean, it's a great story. He goes to the Cali cartel with Moncada's wife, and Cali cartel, because they hated Pablo. Cali cartel is financing Los Pepes, and Los Pepes are killing anybody associated with Pablo Escobar. When Los Pepes first came to be, Colombians were cheering for them, saying, hey, Pablo, you're getting the same of your own medicine, right? These guys are killing people left and right. But then they went too far. They killed an attorney who had his 2 kids with him, 8, 10 years old. It was just, they were out of control. But Don Berna was not an informant of ours. He was an informant of the National Police that was authorized by the Attorney General in Colombia.
You know, just to add to that, like JP said there, alluded to, Los Pepes took Escobar's tactics and used them against him. You know, whereas if Pablo wanted to kill you, he would not only come after you, he'd come after your wife, your children, your parents, anybody that he could find associated with. He would take everybody out. So that's what Los Pepes did to him. And you know what? The real truth is, They had a lot to do with bringing him down there towards the end because they were destroying his resources. If you were a school teacher, like Javier said, the attorneys killed them. If you were a dentist, I mean, anybody associated with the Escobar organization, they killed them. So that really did have a lot to do with bringing the whole Medellin cartel down there towards the end. You got to give credit due, where it's due.
Okay, we're going to move on to Mike again. I see you're logged back on, Mike. Can you unmute?
Yep.
Okay.
Hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Thanks. Sorry, I had to cut out for a minute, take a work call. How do you think, and I hope I didn't miss you guys talking about this, if you did, how do you think things compare now between Colombia and even the Mexican cartels to what it was back then?
Yeah, wow, great question. You know what? And back then, Colombian cartels were working with the Mexican cartels. I mean, the dope would go to Mexico, and then it'd be they cross it into the United States. You know what? That's a great question. To me, Colombian cartel, Mexicans learned from the Colombians. The Colombians were vicious. Where Pablo Escobar used to kill anybody associated. Family, he wanted everybody dead. And but and then the car bombs. I mean, they're both worse bad cartels. Mexican cartels have learned, and what we've all seen, the photos of the bodies hanging on bridges, the heads being rolled when they kill people. They put them on dance floors. They're vicious. I still think the Colombians were more violent. The Mexicans will try to show people, if you don't cooperate with us, this is what's going to happen to your brother, your sister, and they hang them on bridges. They take their heads off on video. We've all, man, there was a great testimony, and this is in open court not too long ago, where the guy testified. They caught a guy stealing dope from him. They had him in a room. They had the whole family. 10-year-old daughter. They made him watch. They opened his eyes, killed her in front of him. I mean, and this is in court. I mean, it's just vicious. I don't know, man. It's just, they're both vicious. Colombians started it. I think the Mexicans learned from them too. So.
I don't have anything to add. They're just grotesque.
It sounds awful.
Yeah.
As far as the actual trade, the quantity, and is it as popular, or not popular for lack of a better word, is it as big as it was back then?
Cocaine?
Cocaine and the drug industry itself, the cartels running things. Is it a smaller organization now? Do you think that, what you guys did actually cut it down in size, or just stunted it? Please don't take it that I'm taking anything away from what you guys did. It was amazing. And watching it was amazing.
And that's one of the things we do, is we try not to shy away from the hard questions. If it's, we get asked a lot of questions about what our opinion is on the war of drugs. Did we have a positive effect, on the cocaine business by taking out Pablo Escobar? Well, the truth is we did, but it probably only lasted for a couple of weeks because the Cali cartel stepped up. Well, we took them out, and then the North Valley cartel steps up, and then we took them out, and then Don Berna steps up with his organization. We take him out. You know what? Today, Colombia is still the leading country in the world for the production of cocaine.
Wow.
They did drop down to number 3, but number 3 is still pretty high on the scale, right?
Yeah.
But it's not the big cartel type organizations like we worked against 25 years ago. These are much smaller organizations. They learned from the mistakes made by their predecessors. Pablo wanted to be the president of Colombia. He got elected to Congress, very high profile. The Cali guys, they tried to present themselves as being a little more professional. They had a chain of drugstores and things like that, but everybody knew who they were. So they were high profile. The same with Ochoa Brothers, Rodriguez Gacha. So the traffickers now, they're not quite as flamboyant, I guess, as the old guys were. Still a lot of violence down there associated with it. But here's the cool thing, especially when it comes to the Mexicans. you know, the Colombians realized the biggest risk they face throughout their supply chain was coming into the United States, right? So what they do, they went and struck a deal with the Mexicans. Hey, listen, we'll give you half the load and it's on you to get in the United States. The Mexicans said, hey, that's great. I'm getting a 50% discount. So now the burden is on the Mexicans to get it across the border into the United States, which they're doing a phenomenal job, right? I mean, we've got to be honest about it. But the Colombians really cut their risk at that point, because now, even though it is coming to the United States, we can still go indict them under the 959 and 960 statutes. They don't have that problem of maintaining gatekeepers along the borders of the United States. I think it's a heck of a business move on the Colombians' part. I thought they were very smart with that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Michael. We're going to go on.
Thank you.
No problem, pal. Danny G, let me. You're going to go ahead and hit your unmute button and go ahead.
Okay. So my question is, in just, you know, my little bubble of experience, which clearly isn't the experience that you guys had. Like when I was at the task force, we would try and get money, obviously, to fund what we were doing. And things like, you know, the war in Iraq came up and we just couldn't get money anymore. It just stopped. And all of a sudden something that was important, like, you know, a heroin job or whatever. And I mean, you know, whatever we took down when we worked a couple kilos or something, that was about the extent of it. But whenever it, you know, whenever the funding was cut, there would definitely be an uptick, and, you know, the drugs got cheaper on the street and there was much more of a flow of it. Did you, and it's, you know, it comes down to politics, but what kind of things impeded you in not just being, you know, stuck on the base, which is where they wanted you? You know, what kind of things impeded your investigations? What kind of, you know, at what point, if at all, did they stop sending money, or did they stop funding, or did they tell you to back off or anything like that because of political reasons or foreign policy issues or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. Let me try to see if I can answer it. When we were after Escobar, we had special funding, and you know what, I'll be honest, we never had problems with the money because Pablo was a priority target. So we were getting money from State Department, from DEA. We used to give the cops the stipend, I think it was $10,000 a month. And they signed, they give us a receipt because we couldn't keep track. They needed gasoline money. They needed money to pay their informants, the expenses. And if we needed another special fund, we'd go into headquarters. We did spend a lot of money on informants, but that was not a problem because it was just, like I said, it was a special pot that we had. However, back later on in the States, and all that Steve talked about, but you know, and we went through some times where, yep, hey, there's no money, we're cutting, no more buy money. It was like, what do you mean no more buy money? Which was always a problem. And then at the end of the fiscal year, and I think you can relate to that, there'd be a pot of money left over. All right, spend it, buy Xerox machines, buy whatever. Like, come on, man. It was just, I don't know. But the politics and the money has always been a problem. And we've been retired, so I don't know right now how that situation is going. But I gotta say, for the Escobar stuff, I mean, we could get whatever we wanted. The only impediment, I think, was back then, I guess, when the courts in Colombia were kind of weak. So I think that was the only impediment we faced back then.
Yeah, and Javier's dead on with all of that. We had a program back then, you know, now it's CPOTS is big programs focusing on the main drug traffickers around the world with DEA. Back then it was called the TKO, the Targeted Kingpin Organizations or Operations, whatever it was. And, you know, I mean, quite honestly, Escobar was the priority because it was bringing so much publicity in. The Colombian National Police invited us to come in. You know, you'd be surprised how many people think that Javier and I just showed up in Medellin after Escobar had escaped and said, hey, we're 2 U.S. feds. We're here to help you. You know, it's not true. We were invited by the Colombian National Police specifically. So we had a lot of the leads that we would get would involve Miami, because that was, that was Pablo's main foothold within the United States of South Florida. And Gary Wade was, you guys have been on task force, each office you have response group responsibilities for different parts of the United States. Well, for us, there was a GS there named Gary Wade. Is that right? Gary Wade, Javier?
That's it.
Yeah. So his enforcement group was our response group. We could call Gary at 2 a.m. in the morning in Miami, and he'd have his guys out at 2:30. I mean, he understood completely the significance of the case, how it impacted the world. And then in headquarters, when money got tight, we had a staff coordinator up there by the name of Barry Abbott. Barry Abbott would go to bat for us. I mean, it's unbelievable all the things that he accomplished for us. So we had, I guess, being in the good position of everybody understanding that you're going after the world's first narco-terrorist. You're going after a man who's responsible for as much as 80% of the cocaine in the United States, and then he expanded out onto a worldwide basis. So everybody understood that significance. Like in Bogota, DEA had one airplane in country, a twin engine, I think it was an Aero Commander, and we've got 23 agents there. Well, everybody has their different responsibilities. You got a couple guys working Cali, you got guys working the cocaine labs, you got guys doing jungle ops, chemicals, all the different responsibilities that everybody had. And everybody's always wanting to use that plane for surveillance reasons. But, the ambassador and our boss, Joe Toff, made it plain that Escobar was top priority. I mean, we did our best not to try to screw over the guys, and if the plane was booked, we had the authority to bump them, but we tried not to, because how it makes you feel, because paybacks, what payback is. It's not something we like, is it? So we were very, very fortunate in that. But it was comical, because they're towards the end of the year, towards the end of the fiscal year, like JP said there, they come to you and they're, okay, we got $30,000 left in informant funds here. You guys go pay your informants. And these guys that, some of those overseas informants, you're paying them $100, $200. All of a sudden you're giving them $1,000, $2,000 holiday. They thought Christmas came early that year. You know how that works.
Okay, I do have a question of my own. This one's an important one for the article, but it's more geared towards Javier since he was there first. At what point did you fully understand the scale of what you were dealing with in terms of how much drugs, violence, and money was involved?
Yeah, great question. Not at the beginning, because I did not know anything about Pablo Escobar. Because I never worked the Miami area. I worked Central Texas, Austin. That was my, so when I get to Colombia, and then when they said you're assigned the Pablo Escobar investigation, that's when I started learning. And it took me, I don't know, a couple of weeks, man, before we said, wow, we're dealing with someone who is basically out of control, someone who is very, very organized, very strong. And the thing that got me also was the terrorism involved in narco trafficking, because we never saw terrorism before with a narco trafficker. So we realized real soon that we were dealing with someone who was not at our level, someone who was, like I said, we say Pablo Escobar was responsible for 80% of the cocaine that was reaching the world, and was using the most violent tactics that we had ever seen. So that to me was something we had to learn right away.
Very good. We're going to do one more question per person so we can start winding down on this. And then we'll give Tony Jean one more Hail Mary, see if she ever shows up. I see her camera's on, but nowhere to be found. Andrew, we'll go back to you. Just unmute and go ahead with your final question for these gentlemen.
All right, final question. Well, I just want to end on, you guys are, I hope you realize how truly extraordinary you are as people, as human beings, and the fact that you are capable to affect a change that will be remembered forever. Thank you for that. It's awesome.
Thank you for saying that, Andrew. I think I just saw Tony Jean there for a second.
Yeah, she was on there for a second.
Yeah, let me see if I can get her. Tony Jean, are you there? We just saw you. I know you exist. I guess we'll keep moving, but go ahead. You guys can go ahead.
So again, I want to go back to the show a little bit about a comparison. Navigante, one of Escobar's men, really creepy looking guy who was just capable of some seriously terrible things. So me knowing that as a viewer, what was your personal impression of him or somebody made like him?
Yeah, great question. In Navigante, all right. The second part, it's not really, there's some false stuff there. Navigante was the informant who did Gacha. Rodriguez Gacha, Pablo Escobar's partner. Navigante infiltrated him. Navigante, when we tried to pay him, the money wasn't coming in. It took a while, right? From Washington. He got pissed off at us one day and he said, well, guys, I don't need your money. I've already been paid by the Cali cartel, which we had to write it down. So Navigante never got paid because he was working for a rival cartel, basically saying, DEA, you're working with a terrorist organization. So anyway, Navigante is an interesting character. Cali loved him. Some of the atrocities I even saw, I cannot say whether that was true or not. Navigante is a real character. And, but, you know, he was responsible for the downfall of Rodriguez Gacha, Pablo Escobar's first partner. He's a creepy guy. He's a bad guy. We know that. But like I said, I saw it too, and I was a little surprised. So some of it was a little bit embellished, but he's a bad guy too, you know. So, but you know, he wrote a book too. So yeah.
Did he? Okay.
Oh, yeah. And it is basically how he did. He infiltrated Rodriguez Gacha, Pablo Escobar's partner.
I never met Navigante.
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Okay, Brian Gillespie, we're going to go on to you. What is your final question?
My final question. I want to end with this, guys. It's been an honor that you probably don't understand for the stuff we do. Pales in comparison to what you did. But my final question is, how did you feel when you first met the actors that were going to play you? And what did you think about them? And did you follow them or talk to them through the series about anything? And did they come to you for certain insight on things?
Yeah.
Let me go first, JP?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Well, when we found out who it was, I got to tell you, you know, we would fly out to California and meet with the writers, and they were trying to keep us encouraged because this is a very long process to come up with a TV show. And one of the executive producers, the showrunner from season 1, his name is Chris Brancato. He became real good friends with us, and we still stay in touch with him. He would say, hey, you know, they're talking to the talent agent over at this company, and they're looking at have you seen the movie The Lone Ranger? And the guy that plays the Lone Ranger, his name is Armie Hammer, believe it or not.
Yeah.
He said, oh, they're talking to him. They're talking to Jake Gyllenhaal. I didn't know who these people are. I'm not just not a big movie guy. But when I saw their pictures, I recognized them. And I don't know if they did that to keep us encouraged or what. But anyway, they came up with Pedro Pascal to play Javier and Boyd Holbrook to play me. And I didn't know who they were. I had never seen Game of Thrones. Turns out Pedro is well known for that. So they put us in contact. We talked on the phone a little bit, got to know each other. And so Javier and I came up with this idea, and we got DEA headquarters to support it, and we got Netflix to pay for it. I live in Northern Virginia, just outside of DC. So Javier flew in from San Antonio. The two actors flew in from their homes. I think both of them were living in New York City at the time. Flew in here on a Sunday to Dulles Airport. We had everybody over to the house for dinner that night. My daughters were here. I think they were still in high school back then. Unbeknownst to us, they had a bunch of their friends just show up on our front door because Pedro was here, you know, from Game of Thrones. And I'm thinking, we just met these guys and they might have an attitude like, you know, you're using us. We don't want to meet people, you know, but very gracious. Both of them are very gracious people. So Monday, we took them all to headquarters. We spent a day at headquarters. They got briefings from some of the analysts that were around back during the Escobar days. They got a tour of the museum, the whole building. They were taking pictures with employees and signing autographs. I mean, just couldn't have been nicer guys. And then Tuesday through Friday, they were embedded with the DEA Academy class in Quantico, Virginia. So they would have to be there in the mornings for PT. They had to sit through one classroom session, had them on the firing range for half a day. learn how to work undercover. They learn how to do felony car stops, different types of surveillance, moving, static, the different things that go on. And these guys, they went with everything. I mean, you couldn't ask for cooler guys. And at nighttime, the four of us were staying at a hotel just up the road from the DEA Academy. And, we're sitting around having a cold drink and smoking cigars. And we asked them towards the end of the week, said, well, what do you think? It's just been productive for this upcoming series. And they said, man, this is first of all, this is the most we've ever trained, I guess, to play a role. They said, but we're so glad we did, because we were going to portray you guys like New York City uniform cops. And that's, Javier and I were both uniform cops before we became federal agents. So we know that side, but being a, plainclothes undercover DEA agent is completely different from what uniforms do. So it was very productive. And then the actress that played my wife, her name's Joanna Christie, she flew into Dulles Airport. I was on the road somewhere with Javier, and she spent a couple of days here at the house with my wife, learning about nursing, learning about her personality. Joanna is British, and my wife's from West Virginia, so she talks kind of like I do. And Joanna was able to hide her British accent throughout the first two seasons of Lake Connie. So I loved it. We stay in touch with these guys. We got to know Wagner Moore real well, that plays Pablo Escobar. Did a phenomenal job, and he is one of the most humble people you'll ever meet in your life. He and his wife both are just some of the sweetest people you ever meet. It was you hear all the horror stories about the actors and actresses in Hollywood. These guys weren't the stereotypical what I'd heard about all the horror stories out there.
And I agree. And Wagner Mora did not know Spanish. A lot of people do not know that, right? Yeah, he learned it 2 months before. Got to Medellin and immersed himself, and did a great job picking up Pablo Escobar's attitude, the way he walked, talked. So great two guys, not your typical Hollywood actor.
Nice. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Our pleasure.
Yep.
Thanks again, Brian. It was a pleasure. All right, Mike, we'll turn over to you. If you could just hit unmute. Do you have a final question for these gentlemen?
I do. First, I don't think I thank you for your service and making the world a safer place. Is there a future plan to make things more peaceful in Mexico and in Colombia with drug trade and everything that you guys fought for?
Well, I mean, I'll go for it. We've been out of it. There's the fight has to continue. There's got to be still pressure. There's still you need that arrest, the dismantling of the organization. But you know what? As long as there's money to be made, these traffickers don't care, man. They're gonna, they adapt. They're smaller. As long as they can get their dope, they don't care who dies, who kills, as long as there's money to be made. And it's just, organizations get taken down, another one is born, man, but money's to be made.
You know what? Colombia actually became a model country for other countries around the world, their law enforcement agencies, when it came to battling the narcotics traffickers. And if you remember when General Naranjo, who was the head of the Colombian National Police, retired, the country of Mexico hired him to come in as a consultant to address their situation. Now, I don't know the insides of the workings that was going on there. I think from what I hear, there was a little consternation between both sides, and it sounded like the Mexicans were a little offended that the Colombians were coming and telling them what to do. But you look at what's going on in Mexico nowadays, and it seems like the president down there is the kind of person that would like to stick the flowers in the end of the rifles that the police officers are using to try to protect themselves against the sicarios. It seems like right now they're not fully committed. It's a tough situation down there. Some of the Mexican authorities that we worked with later in our careers, former attorney general down there has been indicted here in the United States for taking millions and millions of dollars in payoffs from the drug traffickers in Mexico. I don't know how they're going to overcome their issues down there until they get serious about it. But there's tens of thousands of innocent people being murdered in Mexico every year, and probably every month, because of the narcotics traffickers down there. It's one of the most horrendous situations in the world right now, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you for that. We're going to go on to the last question by Danny. Danny, how's it going, buddy? Go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah, first off, thank you for doing this, gentlemen. This was great. I'm honored to have been here and been a part of this. Thank you for your service. So my question is, how different is it today? Obviously, you paved the inroads to, get these things done and target kingpins from other countries and, get the individuals indicted and extradited to the United States and indicted. Is that the playbook now, or has it broken up into smaller cartels? What's different now? Because obviously cocaine is still prevalent on the street along with heroin. What's different now than it was when you guys first started to operate?
Yeah, and I think, Steve alluded to it, but it's smaller groups now, smaller cartels. They've learned from the Escobar days. They're more independent, they try to hide their, in the organization, it's very compartmentalized. They're still doing dope, of course, still moving it. And there's still money being made, but they're, like I said, less conspicuous. And now I think the new trend right now is these groups are dealing now with the prescription, the fake Xanax they're putting in shipments. We've seen the fentanyl with the meth. Meth is, wow, it's making a comeback, I think, a lot of it coming from Mexico, and a lot of dope is getting, mixed in with the fentanyl that's killing people. So they're getting smarter, and they're using more, like you said, the fake stuff. They're the fentanyl, the manufacturing in Mexico with China. I mean, it's still out there. And like I said, I wish I knew how to how to get rid of all this stuff. So anyway, but it's still out there.
But one thing that hasn't changed is some of you have experience working with DEA. There's still a bunch of kick-ass agents in DEA. They're still pursuing the biggest traffickers in the world that are having a detrimental effect here in the United States. We get credit, Javier and I get credited with starting strategies, back in the Escobar days that are being carried on throughout DEA today. That's not what our intent was. We just did what we thought made sense. We tried to employ common sense. And of course, we all know common sense isn't common, right? But, like the SIU programs, well, the guys we worked with at Daheen, I guess that could have been the first SIU unit, but, I didn't know what SIU was back then. And it's just a group of people that Javier had found he could work with. And then he brought me in, and because he vouched for me, I was accepted. I still had to earn their respect and trust. But, it made my job a lot easier getting started down there. But still going on today, you may be familiar with the 959 and 960 statutes that allows the United States to go after people that haven't set foot in the United States. One of the elements of a crime, you have to establish venue. That's one of the primary elements of any crime. And if they don't physically step foot in the United States, well, how do you establish venue? Well, if you can prove in your case that that the results of their action were targeting the United States, the 959 and 960 statutes give authority to go after that. It's the terrorism statutes. So DEA has just a plethora of experienced and high energy, high-tech agents out there making those cases. The things that they're doing today they're awe-inspiring. And a lot of them you don't hear about because, a lot of the things they do are classified. They're working in Afghanistan. We've had agents killed over there. A good friend of ours, Joe Parasante, was shot in the head on an operation by the Taliban, still alive. Joe's in his mid-50s. He's retired from DEA now, and I think he's number 3 in his age group in bodybuilding. This guy looks like a muscle with 2 legs on him walking around. Just a fantastic guy. But so there are differences, but I guess the good news is that we still have the men and women out there with the dedication and the wherewithal to stick with their mission and never give up.
Very good. I'm going to give Tony Jean one final Hail Mary pass, and if she doesn't show up, because I do hear a little background noise, I'm assuming she's working. If she doesn't log on, if you could just say a quick shout out, at least to let her know that you were there, and this way I'll cut it up and send it to her individually, so at least she can feel somewhat part of it.
Hey, Tony G, that's Steve Murphy. Where are you, lady? We've been waiting to talk to you forever. We know you're working. We can see you putting your mask on. God bless you for what you're doing. Obviously, you're taking care of people. We wish you all the best, and we pray for God's protection over you.
Same way, Tony G. Yeah, we saw you earlier. So again, be safe out there. Thank you, and thanks for what you're doing to save a lot of people. Thank you, Tony.
Okay, I do have one final participant. I know he was waiting, so we can hopefully get through to him. And if you can ask one quick question, we can end this. Galaxy S9, it's coming up as you. Do you hear us?
And no new soap.
I see you there. Can you unmute can you unmute yourself? Whoever's labeled Galaxy S9, I see you in a black T-shirt. I think you have to press the unmute button. Can you hear us? Ah, there you go. Okay. Just quickly, we're just actually in the process of wrapping up, but since I saw you log on, you can do a quick introduction and go to your question.
Sure. Sean Hoagland, New Jersey Department of Corrections.
Okay, now
compared to back in the day, the cartel in today's state, you think it's more organized, and our relations with the local government over there?
In Colombia?
Yeah, in Colombia itself.
Well, thank you for joining us, by the way. Thank you for your service, what you're doing there.
Thanks. Sorry, joining late.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Well, we think it's kind of boring, but, but we're retired, you know, so hey, what the heck. It is very organized as far as the government's efforts are down there. DEA has a much, much larger footprint in Colombia now. Major office up in Cartagena. When we were there, there was an office in Barranquilla. But they've really added personnel down there, and the Colombian authorities have just continually demonstrated a commitment to fight the fight the narcotics traffickers down there, trying to protect their citizens. The organizations themselves, the cocaine organizations, not the big cartels like we used to see with Medellin and Cali and North Valley and those kind of groups. More, it's bigger than a mom and pop operation, but it's not the big cartels like they used to have. But I think the big difference is they learn from the mistakes of their predecessors, and they're not quite as high profile as they used to be back when we were there 25 years ago.
Javier, did you have an opinion?
Yeah, it's basically the same. Independent, less visible, but they're still moving a lot of dope, as we can see right now.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank all the participants that were able to help me make my job a little bit easier. And I would definitely want to thank you, Javier and Steve. You guys have been great. Steve, I'll send you a follow-up email just to kind of touch base on a couple of things.
Great.
Again, I want to thank everybody for participating, and I'll see you guys all soon, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Okay.
Pleasure and honor to meet you guys.
Me too. Thank you, guys, and keep doing the good work out there. Appreciate it, man.
Praying for you.
Likewise. All right, guys. Take care now.
God bless.